Well, good evening, you beautiful New Zealanders. We're still talking about David Seymour's Treaty Principles Bill. So what's in the box today for our video? In this video, I'm going to be commentating again on TVNZ Q&A with Jack Tame and David Seymour, which was aired Saturday the 23rd of November. Referring to the Treaty of Waitangi, Tame asked the question, quote, "Do you believe in the sanctity of contract?" unquote. While Jack Tame compares the treaty to a car loan agreement, a mortgage agreement, or a custody agreement. So I'm going to show how Tame subtly misleads his audience. I'm also going to show how he has a wrong understanding of the treaties. Watch.
Do you believe in the sanctity of contracts?
Yes, I do, but I also believe that contracts need to be interpreted, especially over 184 years. And you've got to balance that against the rights of people to be a thinking and valuing being with equal dignity and equal respect afforded to them in our constitutional arrangements.
But you would agree, if not a partnership between races, you would agree, I think, that the treaty is a binding agreement between iwi hapu and the Crown, right? So how would it be just for one party to an agreement to unilaterally define the meaning of that agreement without the other party's consent?
Tame actually said, "You would agree, I think, that the treaty is a binding agreement between iwi hapu and the Crown, right? So how would it be just for one party to that agreement to unilaterally define the meaning of that agreement without the other party's consent?" That's what he actually says. So what are we to make of this? Well, Jack does not seem to grasp a crucial fact. What is that fact? In 1840, approximately 540 chiefs signed the Treaty of Waitangi, and we know that. In Article 1 of the treaty, the chiefs ceded sovereignty to the British, that is, the Crown. So let's go over again what Article 1 of the treaty says. It says, "The chiefs of the Confederation of United Tribes and the other chiefs who have not joined the Confederation cede to the Queen of England forever the entire sovereignty of their country." That's what Article 1 of the treaty says. So let's look at what actually ceding sovereignty means. Cede means to give up or to give somebody control. Sovereignty means government or complete power to govern a country. Now, both these definitions come from Oxford Dictionary, so you can just Google them and look them up for yourself. I'm not referencing those. So Jack's premise is therefore false. Remember, he said what he said. He said you would agree, and I won't need to read that again. In 1840, Maori gave up the right to be consulted. That's the key issue. In 1840, they gave over to the British the right to govern Maori. Now, governing includes interpreting important documents. The government is doing that all the time. One of these documents is the treaty. This means the government has every right to interpret the treaty without consulting Maori. And remember, it was Maori who gave them that right to do that in 1840. That's the guts of the issue. Like all other citizens in a democracy, if Maori want to have a say, they can. This is not saying Maori can't have a say. The normal avenue for doing this is every 3 years at a general election. Sure, while they're waiting for an election, the citizens of a country can protest like the Maori Hikoi. They can initiate referendums and petitions, but ultimately, what goes on in a country, what laws are passed and not passed, is exclusively the business of Parliament. And Maori invited the British here to do that. As I've explained, the Maori chiefs in 1840 gave the British the right to do this, quote, completely and forever. And you know what? Siraparananata, greatest Maori in New Zealand's history, he would affirm what I'm saying here. Listen to what he says. You know what? Maori complaints and dissatisfaction with the plain meaning of the treaty was not new. This has been going on for a long time. Even the great Siraparananata in the 1920s and 30s, which is when he was a politician in New Zealand, had been niggled by activists. Look at what he said. He told them, he went around all the maraes in New Zealand in the 20s and 30s, and he told Maori about the treaty. He taught them about the treaty, and he wrote a book about it. He says the treaty made one law for Maori and one for Pakeha. If you think things are wrong and bad, which is what Maori today think, then blame our ancestors who gave away their rights in the days when they were very powerful. You see, Maori ceded sovereignty completely and forever. That is, they gave over the government of their country to the British. So Siraparananata is just backing me up here. Thank you. And there's the reference, and there's the book. You can read it for yourself. And you know what? The treaty doesn't say that the government's only allowed to do things that please Maori. It doesn't say that at all. It doesn't say that whatsoever. It called on the British to be a government here, to set up a government, and it says nothing about that the government has to agree with everything Maori wants. No, that's immature, that's silly. It does not say that. So, as I have said, Jack Tame's premise that it would be unjust for Parliament to define the meaning of the treaty without consulting the other party is false. So my question is Jack just history ignorant, or has he set out, like the activist, to deliberately deceive the public? Well, I've got my views, what are yours? So knowledge is king. If David Seymour had a better knowledge of the actual treaty, he could have said to Jack Tame, Jack, there is no requirement for the government to consult with Maori when it comes to defining the meaning of the treaty. Via Articles 1 of the treaty, Maori chiefs in 1840 gave Parliament the right to govern. And part of governing involves interpreting official documents, and one of those documents is the Treaty of Waitangi. That's all David needed to say to knock Jack Tame's little false premise over. So if you're wondering, did Maori really cede sovereignty? Well, I've put a document in the description of this video which gives you 10 proofs that Maori actually ceded sovereignty. So if you want to read that, I encourage you to read that. You should read that. So here's just one proof that Maori ceded sovereignty. It's the records from inside the British Parliament. So the following quote is from a book by historian Dr. Bain Atwood. There he is on the right-hand side. He is quoting correspondence between the colony's Attorney General William Swainson in New Zealand and the Colonial Secretary Lord Stanley in London. So this is 1843. Bain starts off by saying, in October 1840, the Colonial Office had welcomed Hobson's 21st May proclamations of British sovereignty throughout New Zealand. It immediately approved and gazetted them, thereby setting the seal of British sovereignty over New Zealand. In other words, Britain in 1840 officially recognised New Zealand as a British colony, and they recognised British sovereignty throughout New Zealand. That's official. That's from the Queen down. It couldn't get any better than that. What was most important in their eyes was that the British sovereignty in New Zealand was now incontrovertible. That is a key word to learn, incontrovertible. Now Bain quotes Lord Stanley directly. He says this, it was a historical fact. This is what he's writing to Lord William Swainson. It was a historical fact that the Crown had asserted sovereignty over New Zealand, and that consequently it was incontrovertible that all of New Zealand and all the persons inhabiting its territory lay within the dominion of the Crown. Now that is a fantastic quote, because Maori often say that it was only the British that the British came here to rule, not Maori. Maori was sort of going to do their own thing and be their own government, their own people group, and be self-determining and have their own authority and be a country within a country. It's crap. It's absolute nonsense. They've just made that up. So there's the reference, and you got the page numbers, you got everything there. All right. So let's just have a quick look at the word incontrovertible, because it's very, very good. The Merriam-Webster dictionary defines the word incontrovertible as not open to question, indisputable. So all the British Parliament was saying it's indisputable that Britain has achieved sovereignty in New Zealand. The Cambridge Dictionary defines it as impossible to doubt because of being obviously true. Collins Dictionary says incontrovertible evidence or facts are absolutely certain and cannot be shown to be wrong. Wow, that's a great word, isn't it? I love it. But that's not all. In Article 3 of the treaty, Maori were made British citizens. So here is Article 3. In return for the cession of their sovereignty to the Queen, so the Maori is swapping their sovereignty to the Queen for something, the Maori people of New Zealand shall be protected by the Queen of England, and the rights and privileges of British subjects will be granted to them. Well, that's pretty clear, isn't it? You give us sovereignty, we'll give you the rights and privileges of British subjects. To try to get around this one, I've heard activists say, oh, we were granted the rights and privileges of being British citizens, but we didn't actually become British citizens. In other words, they're trying to wriggle out of the fact that they were made equal citizens with all other citizens in New Zealand. See, they're very cunning. How should we respond to that? Well, that's easy. It is impossible to have all the rights and privileges of a British citizen without becoming a British citizen. That's the answer. See how they try to wriggle out of that one? Well, what are the implications of Maori becoming British citizens? What does this mean? It means that Maori were made equal before the law with all other citizens. That is the bottom line of Article 3 of the treaty. Maori therefore have the same rights and duties as all other citizens, no more, no less. In fact, I'd go further. It would be true to say that when Maori are treated with special privileges and entitlements, Article 3 of the treaty is actually being breached. For example, Maori were given $800 million in the last budget by the national government. That is actually a breach of the treaty. Because in the treaty, Article 3, all citizens of this country were to be treated equally. See that? Well, we never hear this today, but this is the truth of the matter. So let's get to our conclusions. The treaty is not like a car loan, Jack, or a mortgage agreement, Jack, or a custody agreement, Jack.
I mean, if you think about other contracts, right? If it was like, I appreciate it's different, but a car loan or a mortgage or a custody agreement, it would be totally unjust for one party to unilaterally decide what that agreement means.
Because no one in these agreements cedes sovereignty to the other party. In this sense, the treaty is unique. So Jack Tame is either willfully or in ignorance spreading treaty misinformation on TV. He should be taken off. Now, we know that TVNZ is an activist TV station, don't we? That's what it is. Okay, what I'm about to share with you is extremely interesting. This is about Television New Zealand as an activist TV station, and that's MURIEL NEWMAN on the top right there. She's written an excellent article about Television New Zealand. This is what she says. In 1979, a group of Maori sovereignty activists visited Cuba. Now, a Maori sovereignty activist is somebody who wants to go back on what the chiefs signed off on 1840, that they ceded sovereignty, and they want to reverse that. They're called reversalists or Maori sovereignty activists. And they want sovereignty of New Zealand, not the sovereignty we have today. They want to be Maori sovereignty. Well, these people visited Cuba and began collaborating with representatives of the Palestinian Liberation Front. Man, that's heavy duty. An adaptation of the PLF's strategy for the liberation of Palestine became a template for a radical agenda to gain political control of New Zealand. So what they did is they went to the Palestine Liberation Front to find out how to get political control of New Zealand. In other words, to take over at New Zealand. In other words, to get going with a coup. Two strategies form the basis of their blueprint. So these people who went over there, they had two strategies. They came away with two strategies. The one is through biculturalism, which divided society along racial lines. They aimed to redesign the country's institutions to prioritize Maori language and culture by embedding activists within the government service to change the system from within. And over time, they wanted all land returned to Maori. Well, there it is. You know, this whole Maori activist movement has become like a monster with 10,000 tentacles. And is there any tentacle in New Zealand, any area of our country that has not been affected? Local government, police, nurses, real estate agents, doctors, surgeries, dental surgeries, everything. And so you can see the marks of this PLF strategy all over New Zealand, and they've been at it for some time. And they want all land returned to Maori, which is, I've been talking about this and nobody believes me, and so here it is. Then, by reinterpreting the Treaty of Waitangi as a partnership, this is what MURIEL NEWMAN is saying. This is still part of the quote from her article. They set the scene for co-governance and Maori control of decision-making. Now, the frightening thing about this is that Chris Luxon and the whole National Party is pushing partnership, and that they don't realise, but that's part of the Palestine Liberation Front. So Luxon is actually in bed with the Palestine Liberation Front in going along with the idea that the treaty is a partnership. I wonder if Luxon understands this. MURIEL says it's hard to believe just how effective their divisive plan has been. One of the movement's original leaders, who visited Cuba and was at the forefront of protest action, is now, wait for it, the Deputy Chairman of Television New Zealand. Her name is Rebecca Evans, and there she is. So this explains why Jack Tame is an activist, because you know what? Birds of a feather, they flock together, and Jack Tame is right in the middle of an activist stronghold. So there you go, and there's the reference. If David Seymour was history literate, treaty savvy, he'd be really dangerous. David is dangerous now, but man, if he really got to grips with the treaty and history, he'd be really dangerous. He'd be just like unbelievable. When Maori are treated with special privileges and entitlement, Article 3 of the treaty is being breached. Maori are breaching the treaty, not the Crown. Get that? By demanding a separate parliament, promoting a two-tier society, and firing up a Maori king, you know what? Today's activists are repeating exactly what the Kingite rebels in the period 1860 to 1880 were up to. Do you know that? History's just repeating itself here. Back then it was treated as treason by the British government. It ought to be treated the same way today, but it's not. Well, why not? Well, enter Luxon. Luxon will not confront these multiple breaches of the treaty by Maori. Why not? Well, there are 4 reasons. Luxon is treaty ignorant. Luxon is history ignorant. Luxon is afraid of Maori. And Luxon has a personal, deep-seated and private desire to further Maorification and co-governance in New Zealand. That's why he Maorified Air New Zealand. See? He just bought all his stuff from Air New Zealand straight into the government. People didn't know that, and he didn't campaign on that. So he is flat out furthering both by stealth. Well, here's some more conclusions. What the nut government needs to do is to establish what I have called a settler tribunal in parallel to the Waitangi Tribunal. See, if the Waitangi Tribunal was set up to look at all the breaches of the treaty by Europeans or by the Crown between 1840 and today, well, you know what? There are tons of breaches of the treaty by Maori against settlers and against the Crown. So why don't we set up a settler tribunal? This tribunal would hear and assess all the ways today's Maori are breaching the treaty. And you know what? All I could say is that even if we got a staff of 1,000, they'd be overworked. There's so many breaches going on. What about all the settlers who were ripped off by Maori between 1800 and today? Literally hundreds of settlers were ripped off by Maori with the sale of land in our early settler period. You know what? Maori tribes today would be bankrupted when all the settler claims were heard and compensated if we set up a settler tribunal. By this I mean compensated by Maori, not by the Crown. Oh, no. It's not going to have the government fork out. It would be the Maori tribes forking out, giving money back to the families of settlers who had been ripped off. Well, that's enough for today's video. Thank you, you guys. Don't forget to keep getting our business cards out. There they are. They're doing a great job. They're really making a difference. We've had over 1,500 people now join our channel, our video channel, in the last 28 days. To get these cards, just email cards@stopcogovernance.kiwi. They're only 3 cents each plus courier to get them to. You know what? When you're out shopping, when you go out shopping or you go anywhere, just slip a few on cars. Put them in letterboxes. It's amazing what a lot of people can do. There's an old proverb that says, little by little, great gain is made. So you just always have some in your pocket, and you always give out a few. You get thousands of people doing that, and before you know it, boom, you've made a big impact. Don't forget also, this is our new book that's just come out. Please get some of these booklets. They're 80 pages long. They're going to be $3, not $2, because the cost of printing has gone up, and we don't want to make a loss. So if you really want to truly understand what's going on in New Zealand and be part of the solution and really get with it, get with the party, this booklet is the key, which will truly help you get it, if you know what I mean. You can order these by emailing the same email address, cards@stopcogovernance.kiwi. And please, finally, remember the first booklet we produced called Stop Co-Governance, what it is, why it's wrong, and why it must be stopped. Remember that booklet? Well, we have a few thousand of our original Stop Co-Governance booklets left over from my tour in 2023. You'll remember we printed 550,000 of these, and we believe, but with you guys, we had 960 people out delivering them. Can you believe that, in 2023? And we believe that through your efforts, those people who were out delivering, we actually moved the needle on that election last year. It was incredible what you guys did. So we have a lot of those left over, and we'd love to get them out. They're actually going to now be free. They're totally free. Now, we know that only 1/3 of New Zealand got one of these booklets. So there's a heck of a lot of people who haven't even seen this booklet yet. And if people get them twice, well, they can give them away to somebody else. So please get them out. All you need to do is pay for the courier to get them to you. You can order this book by emailing the same email address. And don't forget, they are now free. Alright, as usual, please like this video, comment on this video, subscribe and share. I love the way our subscriptions have gone through the roof. This is so fantastic. You guys are absolutely awesome. Thank you so much for those chipping in financially. This is also a huge help. We've had some great donations with people just helping, because all of this costs money. You know what? It's quite an expensive thing to run this whole organization. So you guys are doing a great job. Alright, see you next time. I think you're absolutely amazing.